This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let's keep going. We're halfway through April. You have the bones of a roster put together, but now you've got to start filling some holes. And one of them is the announce team. Don West is brought in, and I think the idea is you have Don go do like a trial run here locally in Nashville, and they just try it out. And the other names that are included in this discussion are Mike Tenay and Ed Ferrara. We're going to break all of that down. But what's fun about Don West is, enthusiasm is contagious. And so a lot of times people make fun of old Jim Crockett promotion stuff, and they'll say, oh man, David Crockett sucked. I disagree. I think David's enthusiasm came through, and you couldn't help be excited because he was excited. Don West is the epitome of that. Even if he wasn't exactly, he's not out there yelling tope suicida. He doesn't know all the moves. He just knows when something's exciting or not. And because he's such a salesman, even if it's not exciting, he's going to do his best to convince you and himself that it is. How does the Don West Association come to be? And why do you think, all right, he doesn't know shit about wrestling, but this can work, and here's why.
Wow, several factors. So the WCW creative of Russo and Ferrara and others in the dying days, the Don West name was tabled, and I think there was a conversation or two. Fast forward to who's going to be the broadcasters. And so when you sort of look at those three that we just mentioned that were on the premiere episode, you can easily know where I'm going with Mike Tenay and the NWA lineage and the professor, and he's going to tell you who the champion was in 1948 and 1962 and how many title defenses. So Mike, great play-by-play guy, great leader. I've always been a huge fan of his work. He knows his stuff, whether it's AAA or whether it's WCW or historian. When me and Mike struck up a friendship at WCW, he would talk the territory days, and he knew a guy named Frank Hickey. I mean, Mike knows his stuff. That goes without saying. When you look over on the quote-unquote TNA side of things, Ed Ferrara, Hollywood background, tremendous creative mind in as far as, and he got bashed on doing the JR parody. Look, that wasn't his call, but he did it. But certainly he's got a comedy mind, a writer mind, all that. So he was going to give the yin to the yang to Mike, if that makes sense. And Don he made a fortune off selling Michael Jordan memorabilia in the 90s,
right,
among other things, sports memorabilia. And how did he do it? He's a real sports fan and can tell you every starting lineup, true fact, Conrad, of the Chicago Cubs dating back to the 50s. I mean, he is like a true, that's why him and Mike tonight hit it off from day one. They're both super fans, like uber fans of sports and stats and knowledge and all that kind of stuff. So, I wanted something infectious. I wanted something different. I wanted something alternative. And again, who's the greatest pair of broadcasters in the modern era?
Jarrett and the King.
Okay. You're not going to duplicate them.
Right.
Not even close. And Jerry Lawler, a guy I was born and raised on from being serious cutting promos, money drawing promos. And he's, I don't call him a comedy act, but he's got one-liners from, that was him and Jim's team, but they were so good together. It goes without saying. I knew I wasn't even going to try to compete with those guys. So let's go different. Let's go different, and let's have a fan in the booth, because you would never think Lawler or Ross were a fan at all. They were authority figures. So Don with his infection and a 3-man booth, and that was one of my main selling points to Don. Don, you don't have to carry the load. Matter of fact, at all. Mike Tenay's very comfortable. He could carry the whole show if need be. And Ed Ferrara knows how to tee you up, guide you, this, that. Ed has a creative mind. So Don was just going to be there to be the voice of the fan. Obviously produce, but be the voice of the fan. And so that was the vision of the 3-man booth. That 3-man booth.
Well, Tenay's the guy because you just respect his history and the lineage and all that, but he's not, I love Mike Tenay, but I've heard other people who, like Eric Bischoff specifically, he loves Mike Tenay, but he says Mike's not a play-by-play guy. Mike should be the analyst. Mike should be the guy who's chiming in with all the details and the facts and the backstory, but not necessarily the play-by-play guy. Would you disagree with Eric's assessment of Tenay?
So again, I think, and look, I'll tip my hat to Eric. Eric, I shouldn't tell Eric and be an authority on broadcasters because Eric cut his teeth on broadcasting. He probably won't tell me how to have a wrestling match, but we can't have our opinion about both. And I've never been a real big fan of color number lockup, drop down. We're going to do what a great pair of flying scissors, or like call it move by move. I've never been a fan of that, but Mike being the storyteller with an analytical brain that has a lineage that can have recall and have continuity. That was another thing about, if we're telling a 2-hour show every Wednesday night, the continuity and a good announcer, and Lance Russell could do this, and others, Gordon Soley, basically make sense out of nonsense. You ever heard that saying, Conrad?
Yes.
Yeah. And Mike has that way of doing it, that some things in our wacky world of professional wrestling may have some curveballs and some loose ends that need to be tied up. A good announcer can do that for you. And Mike, I always strongly believe he had that ability. So to Eric's point, being a play-by-play guy, maybe his definition of a play-by-play guy and my definition of a play-by guy are not exactly the same, but I thought Mike could be the lead announcer and play the role of play-by-play, but I'm not a big guy on calling moves. I think that's irrelevant. Let the fan who knows that is whatever it is, let them figure that out.
Talk to me. Well, I mean, here's the thing though, like, if you're trying to make a sports analogy, I mean, that's sort of what you want the analyst to do, right? Like, you don't need Joe Buck saying, "Oh, they're running a fly route." No, you need Romo to say that, right?
But Mike can do, in my opinion, Mike can still do that today. I mean, he can give you the nuts and bolts of moves and arm bars and submissions and the psychology behind it. Mike can, so
I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying in terms of Joe Buck, who's probably, I'm in my head, he's the play-by-play, and Tony's color.
Yep.
Romo, I mean, but Romo is the guy who can.
Joe Buck, let's get the teams right. Romo's not with Buck, right? Buck's
right.
fine.
I was giving examples. My apologies. Jesus.
Here we go.
Chat me up though about why you hate Tony Schiavone personally, and you didn't even consider him. He said at home doing nothing. Why don't you consider him?
That's a good question.
Why aren't you fair to Tony?
You volleying at me today? His name.
What Tony do to you personally?
Not a damn thing. I've always had a great relationship. You trying to drive a wedge there, JR?
Well, I'm just saying he could have, he desperately wanted to get with the WWE. They didn't call him back. So now he's calling minor league baseball, which is, probably not terrible, but it's not where he wants to be. And now there's this new company coming.
He did an episode or two and came up with a big beard.
You know what I say to that, Mike? Bullshit. That's what I say to that.
I get it. It's a wrestling podcast, but he's saving us money on our mortgage. You really trust this process? The reviews don't lie. 5-star review after 5-star review. We make it fast, we make it easy, and it's no cost or obligation. Give us a shot to earn your business. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did, especially if you like keeping more of your own money. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket, so what are you waiting for? Hurry to savewithconrad.com.
I think he was engaged in the wrestling business at this time. And I can't hold my finger to that. Don't hold me to that. But Mike Tenay was the name that came to my mind. And I can't tell you why Tony didn't.
Here's what I'm saying though. Instead of having my Tony Schiavone, the voice of our childhood, work on your show, you get the guy who sold baseball cards instead.
True.
And not only that, but you get Vince Russo's buddy with dreads, who's never done it. So you got two guys who've never done it, We'd rather have them than Tony Schiavone. So I just want to know what the heat is with you and Tony Schiavone.
There is no heat. And I'll say this. Doesn't that give you a vibe that I wanted to be the alternative, and I didn't be exactly WCW. When Tony is the voice of WCW.
We don't talk about Ed Ferrara enough. It seems like everybody talks about Vince Russo. Real quick, is Russo the connection to Ed Ferrara here for you, or do you see them as two totally different entities?
Always, even at the WWF when they brought him on board up there, because there for a while Vince was, I don't say the only writer, but yeah, he was the only writer, and then they brought Ed on, and then when Ed was, me and Ed had. That was not an easy year, 2000, but me and Ed worked together a lot. We talked about doing the Dusty promo. He helped me with the impersonation. Ed's very talented. And, I'll say got that Hollywood background that he looks, now look, Ed trained to be a wrestler. I don't know if you know that. Ed knows the industry from one of the boys' point of view. He I don't even know if he ever had a match, but he'd been around a wrestling school. So then he went off to Hollywood. So his foundation has always been somewhat there. But me and Ed had a really good relationship. So Russo was not the conduit. Me and Ed had our own individual relationship. And Ed is once you get him going, he's very conversational and knows, again, he can write promos, but he can also, many talent in WCW, especially the power plant guys and all this, he would get them out back or in a room and help produce them. Ed can cut not only just impersonations, he can get into character, whether it was Mark Jindrak or whoever it may be. He helped a lot of guys because he's a good producer. Like Bruce. Bruce is maybe the best. Certainly right up there about, okay, let me take this piece of paper, whether he wrote it or not, but let me get into this character and show this young talent how he thinks it should be done. But they would always finish it by, all right, you make it your own. Let me see what you got. Ed had a great skill set like that.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.